What does it mean to believe in a miracle? Do we have to turn from reason to find meaning in the seemingly impossible? Are we abandoning the laws of the universe when we mine fantastical tales for the truths they might hold? Let's look to the Bible for the kinds of stories I am talking about, for indeed, the Bible has no shortage of mind-bending claims. In its pages, the Red Sea parts to save the Israelites from Pharaoh's army. Jonah is delivered from the belly of the whale. And Jesus turns water into wine, heals the sick, and raises the dead. I love revisiting biblical miracles and reinterpreting them in ways that speak to my Unitarian Universalist heart. We know these events are unlikely to have happened as written. And yet, if we can leave behind the straitjacket of literalism, a new world of meaning is revealed to us. The question we ask shifts from, did this really happen? To, what does it mean to say that it did? This morning, I invite you on a journey, a perilous journey that will have us navigating stormy seas in a most peculiar way. We will explore a miracle that appears in 3 of the 4 Gospels, where Jesus steps out onto a wave-swept sea and walks upon the water. Matthew adds an intriguing coda about Peter, and this is the telling we will turn to this morning. Here is the passage from Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 through 32. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time, the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got to the boat, the wind ceased. Let me take a brief moment here to address the ableism implied in this story. This Bible passage has given us the figure of speech to walk on water. And like all figures of speech, it is not to be taken literally. To walk on water in this context is not about walking. It is about miraculous action. Whether you are in a wheelchair or on your feet, following Jesus' invitation out onto the water is an act of bravery and trust. And let us remember that Jesus is a practitioner of radical welcome. He invites everyone to join him without exception and without question. When Jesus calls to Peter, and by extension to us, he does not say, "Walk." He says, "Come." Now, let's imagine ourselves living in and experiencing this scene. A storm is brewing, and we are bobbing about in a rickety boat far from shore. There is danger here and fear. Suddenly we look up, and oh my God, the person we love and admire most is defying the winds and the waves and gravity to come to us. Now imagine yourself as Peter. You see Jesus walking towards you on the sea. Is this real or an apparition? You ask for proof, perhaps half-jokingly. And then Jesus speaks the word that will challenge and change you. "Come," he says. With that one word, he calls you to courageous action, asking that you too enter the storm. Even as the winds lash at you, you launch yourself upon the waves and move. You falter, almost sink. He steadies you, and you prevail. You do the impossible because the impossible has been asked of you. Where has this happened in your life? Has someone challenged you to action, guided you in a special way, called you to put aside your fears? Were you changed by this? Did a miracle happen? Years ago, I was traveling alone in England and Scotland after studying for a term in London. I was already outside of my comfort zone, traveling by myself from hostel to hostel. One evening, I was relaxing after dinner with a group of Scandinavian students, all of whom were multilingual. When I shared my embarrassment that I spoke only English, they laughed and challenged me to change that. And later, one of them handed me the address of the Alliance Française in Paris, where foreigners study French. He was calling me out onto the water. I was very nervous. I barely spoke a word of French, but I made my way to Paris. I studied at the Alliance for a year, came back to the States, re-enrolled in college, and 2 years later, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in French language and literature. We joke it was 0 to 60 in 3 years. But first, in the Alliance lunchroom one day, I met a young American man who had stopped in Paris on his way home from the Peace Corps. We chatted, we bonded, we fell in love. I married him, and that, my friends, is my miracle. The water held me up, and it changed my life forever. But this Bible story is bigger than 2 kids falling in love in Paris. There is a larger message here. Consider the world we live in now. How we are being called to give ourselves wholeheartedly to seemingly hopeless causes. Right now, in our own country, we are confronted with growing authoritarianism, and in spite of our fear, we are out on the water defying the waves. History offers up a parade of heroic figures who have walked upon the water. Think of Gandhi or Frederick Douglass. In living memory, we have Martin Luther King Jr., who called us to brave the wind and the waves time and time again. The police dogs, the fire hoses, the bullets. MLK walked fearlessly through the storm, and while the sin of racism still plagues us, he lives on as a lodestar in our anti-racism, anti-oppression work. All this conjures up for me another storm and another boat, our blue boat home, the Earth, racked and buffeted by the existential threat of climate change. In this rendering of the Bible story, it is Greta Thunberg, a young woman, a schoolgirl when she began her campaign, who bravely navigates the waves and challenges us insistently, urgently, and angrily to change our lives and save the world. Even as we fear at this point that it will surely take a miracle to meet even our most modest climate goals, we join Greta as she attempts the impossible. I said at the beginning that we are asking the wrong question when we wonder whether biblical miracles really happened. That instead, we should ask why the story is being told at all. What does it mean to claim that Jesus walked on water? Some cite this and the other miracle stories as proof that Jesus is the divine Son of God. But we are Unitarian Universalists. Most of us don't particularly care one way or the other about Jesus' divinity. As UUs, we have the freedom and the insight to delve into this story, to reach beyond its literal meaning and discover the message it carries through the ages right up to our day. When Jesus walks on water, he is daring to do the impossible, challenging the status quo, defying the odds. And he calls us to join him just as he calls Peter. With his invitation, Jesus is honoring our own agency and inner strength. We are no longer helpless when we ourselves engage the storm. Indeed, once out on the water, we steady each other, hold each other up, and together we reach the safety of the boat just as Jesus and Peter did. To walk or roll your wheelchair on the water is an act of bravery and defiance. We go beyond watching the miracle, we join it. The lesson is not about Jesus' divinity. It is about bravery, trust, and mutual support. It is about courage, inspiration, and action. I am not asking that you follow Jesus. As UUs, we seek our own mentors and find our own way to brave the storm. And here in this church, our different paths converge out on the stormy sea. Now I know that we are not Martin Luther King or Greta Thunberg. And God knows we are not Jesus. Still, I venture the question, when in your life have you become the figure moving across the water, challenging others to join you? Have you dared to instigate a miracle? I believe the answer is yes, for when we ourselves step out into the storm, we carry the challenge forward and take on the task for a new generation. Now it is our voice ringing out across the water. It is not by accident that in our exploration of this miracle story, I have mentioned all three of our Vision 2050 priority action areas. This morning, we have seen modeled and have been called to lift up radical welcome, anti-racism, anti-oppression, and climate action, climate justice. In our vision work, we are flipping the script. Now it is we who are braving the storm and calling others out onto the water with us. We ourselves are becoming the guides, the inspiration, the motivating force. To overcome racism and oppression, to confront and work to lessen the ravages and injustices of climate change, and to draw everyone into our circle as we tackle the impossible, we challenge ourselves and each other to miraculous action. Nor are we forgetting the dark cloud hovering over us and all of our work, the brewing storm of authoritarianism that was unleashed in full force on January 20th of this year. We are battling mightily against forces that even now are threatening our freedoms and our very lives. We follow others out onto the water and turn to issue the call to those who would struggle with us. Will we stay afloat out here on the choppy seas? I'm afraid there is no easy answer. The headwinds are strong and the waves threaten to engulf us. We feel small and endangered, but when we reach out our hand, someone is there to grasp it. We are not alone, for we have cast our lot together in hopeful action and brave defiance. We look to the future, drawing comfort from the last line of this morning's Bible story. When they got into the boat, Matthew writes, the wind ceased. May it be so for us and for the world.